What's up, Cats fans? Paul here from the Hoops Crew to talk about Jeremy Cameron and the spate of less than ideal form that he's found himself in. And so I want to bring up some stats today. We're going to talk a little bit about how Jezza is tracking so far this season and what we, and I mean we being the Geelong Football Club, I'm maybe getting a little bit carried away there, but what we want to see from Jeremy, but also the Cats players to help him find his touch again. Because the numbers, if we go and check some of the numbers, especially disposal counts, they're a bit more misleading than what we've than what they would kind of at face value appear to tell us. Jeremy Cameron early in the season started like a house on fire. Even a quiet game of 9 disposals still resulted in 2 goals too. But he was kicking 2 a game, 6. Had a dodgy week against the Lions, but the weather was kind of rubbish and not ideal for key position. Not really ideal for anyone. Kicked 5 against the Blues. Everything was tracking really well. And then when the Cats' form took a bit of a nosedive, so did his form. And it's not been ideal. It's not been great. And so let's kind of explore that a little bit, because obviously the goal tally, tells us something. And he was kicking, a couple goals a game. What's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 14, 19. He kicked 19 goals from his first 7 games. He's tracking beautifully at that particular point. A bit over 2.5 a game, and you go, okay. And he was right up there at the pointy end of the Coleman. Things were looking good, and then suddenly we get another donut. You go, okay, no worries. He had a donut only 2 weeks ago, and then he kicked 5 the week after. Nothing to see here. But it was also in our first loss for the season. And then another one, injured and missed the next week. And then he came back against the Giants, his old team, where there's usually a little bit of extra fire in the belly, and only kicked 1 again. He only kicked 1 against the Tigers this week as well. And they, for him, that should be a lick your lips and dominate them sort of team. So what's going on here? Because then when we look at his disposal count, which is something that gets discussed a bit more about Jez these days, because he's been given this license to just kind of run up the ground and have a bit of fun. But even that's, drifted off a little bit in recent weeks as well. And I think what the stats don't necessarily tell us when we look at, his games against GWS and Richmond is that he's struggled so much as a forward to get his hands on the ball that he's been given that license. Not only just in the way as, Jezza, go do your thing, but like, Jezza, get up the field. Like the instructions, it feels like it's been far more explicit. Get up the field, get in the back line, get a touch, just get yourself into the game. And obviously that's huge. Like, that a club can turn around to any player and say, look, go do what you need to do to find form is absolutely important. And you could see signs in the second half. I mean, there's a lot of signs you could see about how Jeremy Cameron and the Cats specifically were trending in the second half of the game against Richmond. You could start to see the round 1 to 7 Geelong start to click into gear again after another dodgy start. Really, we had 4.5 bad weeks there. You could see signs start to cogs starting to click, and you look at Jez, and there's some defensive pressure. He laid more tackles in that game than he has all season. There's signs, but he had to go up the ground to go chase the ball in ways that he hasn't had to up to this point just to find it. He's been really a bit out of touch as a forward, and I think as much as I think there's something to be said for the ability for Jeremy Cameron to just get up the ground and get his hands on the ball and try and kill you the other way. And it's hugely valuable. And you've seen, like, he's gotten the win against St Kilda by playing that type of game. We've seen it, time and time again, what he can do in that regard. But as a key position forward, he's struggling right now. In that traditional sense, in the role that he's actually put on, the magnet that is on the whiteboard that's there, says Jeremy Cameron is placed at centre half forward. He's struggling in that regard at the moment, and he's having to play a different type of game just to get his hands on it. So what is he missing that is causing him to struggle? And I think a lot of it comes back to the issue that we've been discussing in a whole host of match reactions, in post-game live, in podcasts, in everything that we've kind of been doing lately. The midfield. And I hate to keep pointing the finger at the midfield, but that is the beating heart of any football team. If you can't get your hands in the ball in the middle, it's over. And obviously, I think that played a big part in the 4 losses that we've had. And so Jeremy's kind of struggled because the delivery out of the midfield has not been clean, if we've even managed to get our hands on it in the first place. And we've really had to work our way up from defense. And so some of these disposals that we're talking about, when we look at some of these numbers, A lot of those have really come from him having to run deep up the ground to get his hands on the ball and then try and do something with it the other day on the way back to try and link in with your Brad Closes and your Brian Myers and Max Holmes and those sort of blokes who are streaming forward with the ball. Zach Guthrie bringing it from halfback flank and running 15 and then trying to deliver. He's been having to try and link in with that in ways that he shouldn't be. Say for when he's really in full flight, total form, and then he's just getting off the leash where he's kicked 3 or 4 and then he's lured his key defensive opponent up the field with him and then has burnt them going the other way. Right now, I think defenders are feeling, you never feel confident against Jeremy Cameron because you know what he can do, but they're feeling less concerned than they perhaps have in the past. And it's just because his forward craft's just a bit off at the moment. He just seems to be a little bit out of sync more than anything else. And if I compare him to Tom Hawkins, who, there was plenty said about Hawk recently, kicked 9 across his first 3 games. Things were looking great. And then went on a 4-week, never before seen with Tom Hawkins, a 4-week scoring drought, goal drought. He'd had 3 shots on goal across 4 games and kicked 3 behinds. But even Hawk has, started to find it again in the last couple of weeks. People were, coming for Tom Hawkins' head, which was ridiculous. But anyway, he was a bit out of touch, and the delivery to the forward line was really, really poor. But now you can start to see with Hawks, match stats. There's those 4 games. And sorry, I forced me to highlight the entire row. Oh, come back. There was those 4 games, and you can see the disposal count was low. Tom Hawkins is not a high disposal player, but those numbers were down, and you could extend that into the Port Adelaide game as well. But he at least managed to get his hands on the ball, and I think we were feeding him a little bit to help him find some touch. More on that in a second. We were feeding him at that stage to try and get him in the game and get him hands on the ball and give him that shot from the pocket that we saw him nail against the Giants and those sort of things. And now he's starting to click again. He's getting his hands on the ball. He's competitive in those ruck contests when he takes them. We're seeing Tom start to click back into gear again. When I talk about Jeremy Cameron, I'd say there's been a bit more faith and maybe a little bit, again, things are getting lost in the disposal figures that are still there or thereabouts with what he'd normally get. I think we're getting lost in the fact that, yes, he might be getting his hands on the ball, but he's not getting his hands on the ball in the important places where Jeremy Cameron can really damage an opponent. And so I think, a bit like Tom Hawkins from a couple of weeks ago, it's time to feed him a little bit. Give him that little cheeky one as he comes drifting past and he can have a crack from 55 or whatever it is. He only needs to flush one. He's that sort of player. He only needs to flush one. And we can see it with his kicking. And I think about the back end of the season last year where he just had the yips in front of the sticks. And obviously he did and kind of cost us a game recently for some wobbly kicking. But he's a form player. And so late in the season we saw it. He just couldn't connect properly. He was just out of touch, and he's been a bit out of touch at the moment. So give him some cheapies. Someone takes that mark at 60 meters. Look for Jezza coming, peeling, breaking on a short lead or peeling off and just sneaking around the side. Dish him that handball so he can crank it out on his left. There's possibilities here that we need to explore to just get him in the game in the part of the ground where he's most damaging. It's not to say he's not damaging elsewhere, and he's saved us on a couple opposition thrust forward, and he's just floated in and broken up a contest or marked it himself. He's been valuable in that regard. He's ticking a lot of other boxes, but the forward line role that he plays is the bit that he seems to be struggling the most in right now. His core role is the bit that he's struggling with most right now. And so my hope is that he can find that touch, that the players kind of look to him and they look for him and get the ball in his hands just so that he can, again, like I said, flush one from 55 or get a few cheapies and, end the game with 3 goals or something like that and go, okay, we're getting there. And he can feel it in himself because he's a confidence player. So feed him, cats. Midfielders, you're starting to get your hands on the ball in that second half. Bottle that, keep it going, and then look for Jeremy Cameron when you're going forward. Feed him for a little bit. And things will be so different in that forward line. Inside 50 efficiency has been a bit of a problem for us lately, but he can fix that. When Jeremy Cameron is in full flight, it breaks down so many defensive structures. So feed him. Tom Hawkins will be fine. Shannon Neal's learning his craft and is coming along pretty well. Jeremy Cameron is the cherry on top here. If we can get him right, we go surging back into that that top 4 contention again. We've slipped a little bit lately, understandably so, with 4 losses. People are going to doubt us. Cats fans, we've been doubting things a little bit too. But if he finds that touch again, we're on. We're good to go again. So Cats, any of the players who happen to be watching, feed this guy, give him the ball, get the ball in his hands where it matters. And you'll see a change. You'll see a massive change. It'll work. He's one of the best forwards of this century. And there's an argument to be made that he could well be the best. He just needs to rediscover some form again. Feed him the ball and things will come good. Cats fans, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know on social media what you're thinking as well. The Hoops Crew's on social media. You can find me at Paul James Games. Check out our Patreon where you can get some early access to stuff, some exclusive content as well. You can even subscribe for a 7-day free trial to see if it's for you before you buy. Thank you to Valhalla Brewing for your incredible support. We're very appreciative of that. And until next time, Cats fans, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.